Oh, I'm Caleb. I was waiting for you to start talking. I'm Caleb.
No.
Finish. Say your sentence.
Say it without laughing.
I'm Caleb.
I'm Ginette, and this is Surely Mental. Just a quick disclaimer for this episode, we are not psychiatrists, and if you believe that you struggle with any mental illness talked about in this episode, please contact a doctor and do not take what is said in this episode as medical or professional advice. Moving on, today we'll be diving into the trippy topic of intrusive thoughts. I don't know about you, but I struggle with intensive intrusive thoughts on a daily basis, and I'm attempting through trial and error to find ways to cope with it.
I also struggle with intrusive thoughts. They can be very overwhelming at times. However, through discipline, every day we can overcome the struggles and strive to improve upon our mental well-being. The only thing you are competing against is yourself. What tea are you drinking today?
I'm drinking a chai latte with chai tea from Bigelow.
And I am drinking matcha green tea by Bigelow.
So, the first question anyone listening to this might have is, what are intrusive thoughts? Like, what are we talking about right now? Well, basically, intrusive thoughts are thoughts that come out of nowhere and you feel like you have no control over them. Lots of times they can be thoughts that contradict what you believe, and can be very bothersome or unusual to you. And they, as I said before, they can be very hard to control. Though there are ways to deal with them, which we'll get into later. And it is good to note that occasional intrusive thoughts are normal. Everyone has them to a certain extent. But if they happen often or are affecting the way you live your life, you should definitely talk to a doctor, because that's when it becomes something that you need to work to deal with. Caleb, what are the most common types of intrusive thoughts?
So, germs, infections, and other kind of contamination. Basically, if you all of a sudden just get really concerned about germs and stuff like that, that's an intrusive thought. And then also taking steps to deal with that, like aggressive hand washing and etc. and all that fun stuff. Violent acts, aggression, causing harm to other people is also an intrusive thought. I read an interesting book about emotions, and it talked about that, like, a lot of times the only reason this reminded me of intrusive thoughts is because it mentioned violent acts, but it was like, yeah, a person does, maybe smack somebody. Yeah, that's a violent act, and you should take steps to figure out so that doesn't happen again. But a lot of times people don't find the root of the issue, which is generally like emotional distress.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that's a root issue of intrusive thoughts, but it just made me think of that book. Doubts about doing tasks wrong or leaving tasks unfinished. Religion, blasphemy, or being an immoral person. Sexual acts or situations. Acting out or saying the wrong thing in public. And negative thoughts. These are all examples of intrusive thoughts.
And for me, the ones I deal with the most are probably violent acts. Saying the wrong thing in public is just like, I don't know, there's the little voice in my head's always just like, do this or say this. It's like, no, absolutely not. And doing things wrong. Also negative thoughts as well. What about you?
I have less... I'm trying to think of how to do this. I have less conscious intrusive thoughts than I have subconscious things. Like, I'll say something with a group of people and not even, like, give it a second thought until everybody leaves. And then I'm like, oh, shoot, I probably shouldn't have said that, or I probably shouldn't have done that. Maybe that's just anxiety. I will say less, like, of these intrusive thoughts kind of things, like just basic ones. Like, walking by a fire alarm, I always want to pull it. Or cars driving down a highway, I want to open the door. Things like that, I guess, I would say.
Yeah, and there are side effects to having intrusive thoughts, which can include feeling ashamed, worried, scared, or guilty about the thought, which I think kind of like what you were talking about, where after the fact, you were like, why did I do that? Like, why did I think that? Why did I think that was a good idea? That could be a sign of like guilt or ashamed. Um, and also, if the thought is disturbing, don't worry about it as long as you have no intention of acting on it. Like, say you have the little voice in your head tells you to go murder somebody. Like, that doesn't mean that you want to murder somebody. Uh, but if you have plans to act on that, that's when you need to go seek more medical help. And also, people who are most likely to struggle with intrusive thoughts, specifically related to self harm and suicide, are people with depression. Um, like I'd say like 50% of my intrusive thoughts have to do with self harm, and it can be a tricky topic to deal with, but it's you can't really stop the thoughts from coming as much as you can find ways to deal with them and react to them. It's the way that you react that really affects how it's going to affect your mental state. And oops, why do we get intrusive thoughts, Caleb?
So sometimes there's no cause, but as I was saying earlier about the underlying emotional issues, the majority of them are caused by stress, trauma, or anxiety. That being said, a lot of just common intrusive thoughts are completely normal and, again, not really a concern. Only when they're happening more frequently or they're becoming more dangerous or you're thinking about acting upon them even more, that's when it can be concerning. Also, a lot of illnesses can be associated with intrusive thoughts, a lot of mental ones, such as OCD, eating disorders, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, or PTSD. Those are all common causes of intrusive thoughts, but also physical ones, such as like a brain injury, dementia, or even Parkinson's disease.
Yeah, and some signs that you could have a deeper cause to your intrusive thoughts and they're not just a normal part of your life are if they last for an extensive period of time or they're reoccurring a lot. So, like, you're having the same thought over and over again. If they cause great distress in your life, like you're really worried about it and you don't think that it's normal. And if you feel like you have to take action in order to control them. Which, the best example of this that I can think of, like, in order to control the thought, is I've heard that a lot of people who have thoughts of self-harm, like intrusive thoughts of self-harm, feel that the only way to silence the thought is to act on it. So they do it not because they want to, but because they think it will make the thought go away. And next up is how can we deal with them? We've talked a lot about we have to work on ways to deal with them, but what are those ways to deal with them? One way is CBT skills, which are cognitive behavioral therapy, which is basically changing the way you interpreted or respond to the thoughts. Which personally, CBT did not work that well for me. But I did find it, it was like the worksheets that they gave me didn't work well. But then I found myself using the skills in my life. So it's kind of like there's a bit of work that's not that enjoyable that you have to go through in order to learn it. It's the same with everything. It's just a way of life. And then there's also medications that can help you deal with intrusive thoughts. I can't think of any off the top of my head. But yeah, medications can help you deal with them and help kind of like silence the chaos going on in your mind. And also self-care. By basically telling yourself that this doesn't define who you are. And you can change the way that you think about these. Which starts off by learning to identify them. Sometimes when you have intrusive thoughts, you don't know what's going on. You feel like, why did I just think that? What's going on? But if you're able to identify them as, oh, this wasn't me, this was an intrusive thought. That's the first step. And then accepting that a thought is there and don't let it bother you. You want to just let it happen, accept that it's temporary. Don't freak out over it. I've had complete mental breakdowns over intrusive thoughts, but you can't let it get to you that far. And you just have to wait for it to pass, basically, because they will go away. It's not going to last forever. It's a temporary, quick thought, and it's over. or sometimes it lasts for a long time, but it's still temporary and it's going to end. And then after it's over, just be kind to yourself. There's nothing wrong with you mentally or physically. And you just are a person who deals with intrusive thoughts like a lot of other people do. You're not alone. And just continue on with your day. Yeah, like, don't look for deep meanings in them. Like I said before, they are completely temporary. And yeah, just don't try to suppress them. And don't act on them. And I'm trying to slow down because I was talking really fast.
It's fine.
Yeah, don't act on the thoughts, especially if it's something violent to yourself or others. Or if it will cause any, even if it's not physically violent, if it will cause any harm emotionally or physically or anything, don't do it. If you want to do it, whatever it is, contact somebody who you can trust. That could be a family member, a friend, a doctor, even like a teacher or just someone that you trust with like personal information. And yeah, don't suppress them. Don't just be like, oh no, it's not happening. I don't know what's going on. Like, accept that they are there. Basically what I'm trying to say. It's a hard part of life to go through intrusive thoughts. But it is temporary. And they're just part of life for a lot of people. And while there's not much you can do to stop them, there are, like, changing the way you think about them and allowing yourself to care for yourself mentally and not acting on them if they're violent can really change the way that you live your life. And what do you think, Caleb?
I think you said it perfectly. These things, as scary as they can be sometimes, they are only temporary, and everyone's got them. They only start to become a problem, when they're happening more frequently or they're getting more dangerous, as I've stated before. And then, yes, you should reach out to a trusted adult. But as far as just the regular intrusive thoughts, as long as you don't have an intention to act on them, and as long as they're not impacting your daily life, then it's nothing to worry about.
Mm-hmm. It doesn't define who you are. Like, I'm not going to say what these thoughts were, but I've definitely had thoughts where it completely contradicts my way of thinking. And I've just been like, well, that is not me. And just you have to accept that it isn't you. It does not a reflection of what you believe in and what you, who you are. It's what the name says it is. It's intrusive. If you don't want the thought to be there, then it's definitely not what you want to be thinking. It's not a conscious thought. And yeah, there's not much that you can do about them, but that's okay. As with a lot of things, it's not necessarily about stopping it as it is with learning to deal with it in healthy and growthful. Is growthful a word?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. I'm trying to think of a word to replace that. Well, in healthy ways. Beneficial ways. There. It's only been 14 minutes.
Yeah, I'm aware. And we've been through all your notes.
I talked way too fast.
We talked fast, and then kind of towards the end, I could tell you were just dragging it on and on.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, we get it.
I looked at it, and it was like 10 minutes, and I was like, uh-oh.
Maybe it's only going to be a 10-minute episode.
Who knows?
It's not like anybody watches them anyway. Just saying.
My stepmom watches them.
Really?
Yeah, she was asking me like what we were talking about in the next ones and all that kind of stuff, and I was like, go away. I didn't say that, but I wanted her to go away.
Okay, are we talking about intrusive thoughts or anything else you want to add to this episode?
Not that I can think of.
I would like to do something with Valentine's Day, but I don't know how to put that in. Are you sure she's watching it? Because Episodes 7 through 11, nobody has watched.
Oh, she said she hasn't watched it in a while, but also she started more recently, and so she started from the beginning. She was listening to it with my dad.
Okay, then nobody's watched number 2 or number 4.
They might be watching it on YouTube because those are getting views.
I know, but I don't like that because those are uncut.
Thanks for tuning in. Surely Mental is a weekly podcast released on Mondays at 3 p.m.
Don't forget to follow us at Surely Mental Podcast on all socials. This is Caleb.
And Ginette.
You can find us personally on all socials at cable_2431.
And at Ginette Ireland. This was Surely Mental. See you next time.